Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited to chat with you. And
Happy to
okay,
be here.
so you are a managing partner of Anorak Ventures, which is a pre-seed seed stage venture fund focused on emerging technologies such as AR, VR, AI, robotics, 3D gaming, etc. Basically, everything that's very cool and fun. So, could you tell me about your background? Like, how did you even end up starting Anorak? And yeah, how do you get into the position that you are in today?
Sure. I think one thing that's interesting about getting into venture is there really isn't a straight line for most people. I think it used to be investment banking was kind of a natural funnel into venture, but there was a lot of people who had success building their own startups and started getting into venture, and there's just loads of different ways to get into it. I got into it in a pretty organic way in that I was a founder myself and I operated a business for 6 years, unrelated to technology. But I always really appreciated and enjoyed entrepreneurship. And then after that, I got into technology. This was in 2010 and got into video games specifically. So not necessarily the production of video games, so not working for like an EA or an Activision, but working for a tools provider that sold to publishers that provided software to make the lives of video game developers easier. And so you get when you're providing, we provided a very small tool to what is the entire ecosystem of tools required to build video games, but you get an amazing insight into how the whole video gaming industry works, and the technology involved and the business involved and all those different things. And it was, this was when Unity was really starting to gain traction. Epic and the Unreal Engine was also kind of in its earlier stages as well. And there was a lot of different pieces that was required to create a video game. It all since has been consolidated, or a lot of it has been consolidated, but you used to need one tool for lighting, one tool for physics, one tool for sound. But it was a unique time. It was a really fun time. And I was able to build a knowledge base and a network in the video game industry. That company was acquired by Autodesk. I then joined Autodesk, working in their games technology group. For developers out there, you guys know that they have a couple of very big 3D suites that are used in video games and also used in film and TV. And so my knowledge kind of grew into these other areas. And then I started making angel investments, and one in particular, which was super successful and kind of gave me the jumping off point to start investing on my own. And that was Oculus. And Oculus was founded by a bunch of people who I used to work with at that video game technology company, which was called Scaleform. It was amazing to have a front row seat to that kind of growth, and that whole story: growth of an industry, growth of a company, growth of a technology. And when that company sold, which was roughly 18 months from investment to exit, which is, from a return perspective and from an IRR perspective, makes the feat that much more impressive to investors. I suddenly then had a bunch of dry powder to start making bets on my own, more bets on my own, not necessarily need a day job anymore. It's not that I could retire for life, but just gave me some freedom to explore what I wanted to do. And so I started making a bunch of angel investments. Part that I kind of skipped over is I was in Washington, D.C., and when the acquisition took place by Autodesk, they moved me to San Francisco, essentially for all intents and purposes, the epicenter of the startup world. And so started to get involved in other companies and, made a bunch of bets that didn't work out and made some bets that did work out, as is the nature of venture. I think I started to get intrigued with how venture worked, the whole industry of venture, and started to really consider it as a career path. I think, taking other people's money and investing it is a massive responsibility. So it's not something that one does lightly, especially with kind of 10-year fund life cycles. And at the end of the day, people are trusting you with their hard-earned money to to multiply it. And so I think, two things had to happen. Two things gradually happened. And one was that I gained the confidence in myself that I do have a knack for this, and that I have a knack for identifying talent early, and a knack for identifying trends that I think are represent business opportunities. And two, I had to prove that I knew what I was doing, and I had to understand everything that it would entail, and really educate myself on how funds work and all of those different things. And over a span of about 2 years, I did that, mainly writing my own checks, but also doing a couple of SPVs with some friends, and had some more success with those vehicles. And just the proof points continued to mount up, and I continued to gain a passion for what I was doing. And that ultimately culminated in Anorak Fund 1, which was kind of, for all intents and purposes, it was a 2017 vintage fund. And it was essentially an extension of my angel activities, of kind of writing a bunch of smaller checks, and working very collaboratively with other people in the industry that I knew and that I liked. And I did that, and we invested in about 53 companies out of that fund. And that fund is performing really well. There's 3 companies in there that we invested in at the seed stage that are worth north of $1 billion now. 2021, we created Anorak Fund 2, which is about double the size. So it's 25 million. And it's just more of the same, just kind of getting a little bit bigger, being able to get a little bit more ownership, expanding the team. So we brought on another partner. But, we know what we're good at, and that's finding talent very early. And we continue to focus on that. Yeah, as you mentioned, tend to invest in companies being built around differentiated technology. So technology that we think gives companies and industries unfair advantages. And those technologies are things like computer vision and artificial intelligence, and leveraging robotics, leveraging AR, VR. That's not exclusively what we do. Not everything we do is that. We'll invest in marketplaces, and we'll invest in kind of just solid founders that are building great software and or hardware. But, I would say that's a primary theme of the fund, is kind of differentiated technology. That was a lot of talking.
No, that was amazing. That was so cool. I felt like I was, you're taking me through your journey and your theses and your process, which is incredible. So no, that was awesome. I want to go back to Oculus. So when you first, discovered Oculus, or when you're talking to the founders and whatnot, do you have a big thesis around metaverse and VR and whatnot? Because it wasn't really, of course, metaverse, it had existed for a while, but like the concept, but VR it also had existed for a while, but really was pretty unknown. Did you have strong thoughts and feelings around that, or were you like, this team is stellar, what they're building is game changing, I'm gonna jump into this? Like, what was that? Take me through that.
It's exactly what you just said. This team is stellar. They're building something really unique. The right people were getting involved. The right people were backing the efforts of the company. That was it. It's not often that you see opportunities that are truly, truly groundbreaking. I mean, there's a lot of, synthesizing other ideas and making, improvements to existing kind of ways of doing things. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's massive opportunities that can be built just by making, HR better, or buying a home better, or e-commerce better, like massive. But I wouldn't say that excites me to the degree that something like an Oculus does, where you're really, creating something that was so groundbreaking and so new, and essentially trying to create a category that didn't exist beforehand. It's exciting for a bunch of different reasons. It's exciting because of the business opportunity that is possible by creating and defining a whole new category. But it's also exciting as an investor just to talk about. And when you have such an exciting story like Oculus had, like, we are creating something that didn't exist beforehand, and doing it in a way that, provides people a whole new reality that is feasible at a modest price point. it's also the other investors. It's also investors who get excited about it. It's also industry leaders who get excited about it. It's everybody who gets excited about it. And that type of excitement enables you to hire the best people. It enables you to attract more talent. It enables you to attract developers to rally around and build for. But that excitement is infectious. We're all humans and we all operate like the same way. We like to get involved in things that, excite us personally. It was for all of those reasons that it was such an exciting opportunity.
When you're looking at investments, are you leaning more on the market potential or on the founding team or on like the story? Well, I actually, no, I'd say that story is important, but like I think probably founding team and market is probably more important. Yeah. Do you lean on one versus the other a little bit more, or is it even, or is it kind of like a recipe where a lot of things have to match up?
A bunch of things have to match up. Those are the two primary things, though. It's like you've got to believe in people who are building it, and you've got to believe in, directionally where they're going and what they're building towards. But, at the earliest stages, like you are really betting on the team to, have that drive and that ability to persevere and that desire to win, and that unique insight and all of, there's 100 different ingredients, I think, that go into a successful founder. But that's what you're spending a lot of the time trying to really understand.
Very cool. Is there something that, I'm sure there's something, but what is most exciting to you today in terms of a sector, a market, a product? What are you looking at where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is like brings me back to the Oculus days. I'm so pumped.
The ability to capture environments is still very much at its infancy. And capture environments, capture things, all these different things. So, I think in general, kind of the digital twin movement, both in business and in personal. In business, it's a little bit more mature because there's a lot of obvious benefits to having your building completely captured, digitally and readily accessible. Things as simple as maintenance to things like sales or, whatever it is. I think on the personal side, we are still at the infancy and there's still too much friction to make it really worthwhile. But I think that will change over time. And I don't want to have to, I just want a digital replica of my body where if I need a new pair of shorts or I need a new t-shirt, it's just like that information is saved for me and it's very readily accessible. And I don't have to fuss with making sure that things fit me properly. Also amazing for like waste and frivolous purchasing and things like that. Like returns are waste both for businesses and bad for the environment. But whether or not it's yourself or your home or whatever it is, like you just have a degree. Software gives you a degree of efficiency in operations that we are now very familiar with when it comes to scheduling or doing podcasts or, organizing your files or organizing emails. We're so familiar with that, but we haven't yet experienced it more as it relates to the physical world. And I'm excited to watch that trend continue to change.
Are you excited more from a standpoint like a digital twins with people or a digital twin of like buildings and infrastructure and more entities that are not alive?
Honestly, I'm excited about the personal side the most because it doesn't exist right now. Like if somebody cracked that nut, helping just regular people to access 3D models and digital twins. And there's a variety of different reasons why they would do that, for gaming and entertainment, for fashion, for home, for, there's a variety of different vectors that can take, but they're all empty at the moment. So that is just like, that's just an wide open ocean for somebody to be able to attack. The business use cases are like, they're there already. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of different companies that are attacking that for architecture and visualization, for medical, for like, that is a known problem. But if you're asking me like what I'm most excited about over the next like 20 years to see, my kids perhaps, having a really leveraging digital twins in new and exciting ways, I'm so curious. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm very curious to see what that looks like. And I think it represents a substantial opportunity.
That's super cool. Yeah. So like, I guess there's like the, example of like trying on clothing like that. That'd be super useful and very, I guess simple in the sense of where digital twins can go because they can get pretty crazy. What are some like crazy sci-fi use cases of digital twins that you've heard of? Because, I go to, I don't know, I always say like, man, if I could clone myself, I'd get so much more done, blah, blah, blah. I feel like a lot of people say that. What, in your mind, the digital twin sci-fi use cases that are still in the realm of possibility, what are some of those things? If you just had to like guess.
I kind of have been deliberately vague because the truth of the matter is that I don't know what they are right now. I think that one concept that has excited me for a while is this notion of like, you have all of these things in the real world that you've spent time collecting. And I'm not just talking about collectibles. I'm talking about, I'm looking around my office and there's a couple of old cameras that I got from a thrift shop. There's an abacus that I have from the Republic of China. So it's probably 50, 60 years old. There's an original iPod I have in box. There's a couple of other things that I got in a thrift store that are like 1930s monkeys. I mean, there's all this weird shit around that I surround myself with that makes me, that is ways that I express myself, makes me comfortable in my home office. This notion of having a digital locker or a digital version of my stuff or my home office or whatever is, I think, something that unique and interesting. Baseball cards are an interesting kind of thing to pattern match off of. Baseball cards are just representative of the players, right? And they have different rarity and things like that. And when I was a kid, that was what we all collected, and we traded them and we cherished them. And that is just that is like a physical representation of another physical representation. And so what does a digital representation of a physical representation look like? Or what does a digital representation of another digital item look like? There's like 3 permutations in there: physical to physical, digital to physical, and then digital to digital. What's happened in Web3 is that I think that there's been this kind of political and philosophical movement, I think, has in some ways been a cover for a lot of people who are just out to make a quick buck. And so you've got a whole bunch of people who are preaching these things, but really are just out to make money. And then secondly, is you also have this zeroing in specifically on the problems, because a lot of what I just discussed is like, somebody could hear that and just be like, oh, he's talking about Web3. But the other side of it is Web3 for technology's sake, and not the thought about the gameplay mechanics and really the things that the reasons why somebody would use it. People don't use technology for the sake of the fact that it's technology. People use technology because it helps them do something. It helps them, access a computer with just using their voice. So you've got voice compute. It helps them, do a whole slew of things that they want to do. I'm not calling on Alexa because I'm excited to just, hear my own voice. I'm calling on it for a specific reason. And I think that's what a lot of Web3 missed. While the underlying technology and interoperability and protocol, interoperability and protocols are things that have existed long before Web3 came around. We have required that for technology to get where it is, and we will continue to require that, Web3 or not. Yeah, I think that's what we've missed in people trying to create digital representations of other digital objects like, NFTs and all that stuff. And at some point in the future, probably maybe with some elements of Web3 in the background, I think we'll come back around to some of the things that Web3 has brought forward. But in its current incarnation, with all of the noise that has been built around Web3 and the mistrust and the bad actors, et cetera, I don't see it getting there with under this kind of Web3 moniker, let's say.
Are there areas within Web3 that you consider bright spots going forward? So like NFTs for unique asset ownership, or even like collectibles or art or whatever, crypto tokens for like micropayments, or, Web3 for now, I want to take a step back, let it kind of play out, and then I can maybe check it out in the future? Or are there shining spots within the umbrella of Web3 that you see?
I think where you're solving real problems, I'm intrigued. I'm spending a bunch of time with one company right now that's basically building a Web3 version of, which I think is an intriguing idea, because you have this, right now you have the number one or one of the top code repositories in the world that's housing, incredibly widely used software packages being owned by a corporation. And there's censorship that goes on there, and there's a whole bunch of different things that can be dangerous, to have a corporation owning the number one software repository. On the other hand, a lot of the things that are removed from these, a lot of the censorship that takes place is, people, you can use repositories like GitHub for all kinds of things. You can share files on there. You can share illicit files on there. You can share child pornography on there. Like you can do a lot of different things using a platform like that. And so there are, I think, philosophically, a bunch of people were saying nobody should own our stuff. It should be fully democratized. Well, that means that sure, but then that democracy has to work, and it has to have safeguards in place to ensure that bad things aren't happening on there. I, for one, given the current state of Web3 and given the current state of, say, Microsoft, I'll take Microsoft all day. Like I want there to be somebody who's responsible, and I want there to be even if they have, even if their intentions aren't necessarily 100% aligned with mine. They're a corporation. They have to make money. I get it. They are a publicly traded company, and they have responsibility to shareholders, and they've got to keep their company going. And if something goes wrong, they're on the hook, and they're going to, there's accountability there that isn't necessarily there in Web3 yet, or I haven't seen a model that has given me enough confidence that it is there. But that's one example of of an area that I think is interesting, where you're solving real problems. I think represent an interesting opportunity.
Would you be, let's say that there was, I don't know, some company that utilized Web3 for XYZ, who knows what, and it just did unbelievably well, and it made sense, and everyone was very happy, and some shining example of some Web3 company. Would that kind of be the signal to you that, okay, now I'm seeing real problems get solved here, I'm now going to get more excited about this space? Or you're like, no, I want this a repeat. I want to see tons of problems getting solved by technology, because that's the purpose of technology. Before I get super excited.
Yeah, I couldn't answer what it would be exactly that would catalyze my belief, but certainly, companies coming out solving real problems and is what I'm looking for. And I haven't seen a company in the Web3 space that I've looked at and I've been like, wow, that's a real problem, and they are really solving it.
All right, so augmented reality, of course, that's been super hot. Apple Vision Pro released probably I feel like it was like yesterday. It was probably been a month or so, probably. And it's funny because they didn't mention the word metaverse. They didn't mention the word. Maybe they mentioned VR once or something like that. They were very low key and differentiated how they spoke about Apple Vision Pro, its capabilities, spatial, compute, machine learning, whatever. And now everyone's super excited about the potential. Tell me your take on Apple Vision Pro and kind of what it represents to the space of AR just as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's a real vote of confidence to the space as a whole. I think they are the best technology hardware manufacturer in the world. And the fact that they are getting in the game means that they see something here. They see a serious opportunity here. And a lot of people are taking notice. Investors are taking notice, and developers are taking notice. And, so it's bringing a kind of renewed interest and a renewed excitement to the space. I would say most importantly is that Meta has had very little competition. They've kind of been able to go along at their own pace. And Mark has been able to focus on whatever Mark wants to focus on, without real fear of somebody else coming in and eating his lunch. So regardless if he sees an opportunity in, let's say, enterprise, because it's not in his DNA, because that's not where he wants to focus, because all of these different things, he doesn't need to do it, because if he doesn't do it, it's not like somebody else is going to be there to like pick up the pieces. I mean, there's other companies out there, but nobody's been a real serious contender. So he can focus on initiatives that he wants to focus on, not necessarily that the market is telling him that he needs to focus on. And that sucks for consumers. Like when you have competition, consumers win because they get what it is that they're looking for. If they are calling for something in particular and there's multiple players in there, somebody is going to meet that need. And that hasn't been the case. And so it's very exciting for me to see a viable competitor entering the space who is going to ensure that the hardware, or who is going to help ensure that hardware is meeting the needs of the customers. I'm taking liberties here, and I'm just saying, I'm reading the tea leaves and I'm saying what I believe. What I believe is that Mark does what Mark wants to do, and he doesn't necessarily, he's a very long-term thinker, and he's thinking strategically about where he wants, what he wants VR and AR to look like, what he wants Meta to look like in the future, blah, blah, blah. He's not necessarily first and foremost thinking like, this is where the business opportunity is, and this is where the market is today, and we should be meeting this. Yeah, and we should be meeting this, and we should be giving customers what they want.
Is it fair to say that, but I agree that competition makes better consumer experiences hands down, but the Apple's going after AR initially, and Mark seemed to be more focused on, with Meta, more VR and more immersive experiences. Do you think that this will really light a fire underneath them? Because it's like a pretty different product initially, at least. Maybe in the future it'll be more, the AR headset can get more VR, but I feel like it's different markets. Like VR for me is almost like video games. Like there's people that play video games, people that don't. AR for me is more like a cell phone. Like everyone's going to have one. How do you view that? Because they seem like different products.
Physically, they're the same product. I mean, physically, there's screens in front of your eyes, and there are cameras facing outward. I mean, a lot of people were fooled with pictures of the eyes that this was a see-through piece of glass. It's not. It's a VR headset for all intents and purposes. So physically, it's the same, and because physically it is basically the same device, you will, people have the potential to use it in very similar fashions, or the potential to use it in the fashion that they want to use it in. So I think that they're very much playing in the same sandbox. Both of them are using pass-through. Both of them are using very similar technology. Yes, as you said, the reveal video didn't talk much about gaming at all. But then if you look at the website if you want access to the emulator, it's talking about game developers on the Apple website. So like to my point earlier on beforehand, it's like they're going to go to where they're getting all of the demand. So they probably went out with this non-gaming idea, or this idea that this is who our users are, but they're a smart company, and I'm sure that a ton of the inbounds that they were getting was from game developers who were like, "Hey, we want to develop for the Vision Pro." Customers will win.
Who do you think that first, or what will be that first couple viral apps for Vision Pro? Is it going to be games? Is it going to be, I don't know, some cool Microsoft Office workspace, or I don't know, some kind of boring but needed software that everyone has to use for work? Or is it going to be something crazy and fun, like, I don't know, Pokemon Go, but with your headset or something?
I want to clearly state that I think that the media has a way of kind of skewing perception that happens with technologies all the time, where people get excited about a technology, they start talking about it, they start investing in it. Media jumps on it because they love a headline and it's a newer technology. They talk about it and inflate the expectations and everything super high. And ultimately it puts the position, ultimately it ends up not living up to that hype that the press has put out there. And, essentially that is their job, to write exciting and enticing articles. And then you have this kind of trough of disillusionment that we've seen in VR. Those who have been in it for a long time have always felt that there was going to be this. Nobody expected that one day everybody's going to wake up and put on a VR headset, but press put out this unrealistic expectation that caused these kind of stupid cycles. With the Apple Vision Pro, I am under no illusion that the numbers for this thing are not going to be groundbreaking. Like, this is an expensive device that has a very certain use case, and it's going to be narrow to begin with. But this is a long-term investment for Apple, and they will continue to iterate and bring out cheaper products and bring out better products. But there's not going to be any overnight. We're not going to see everybody using these Vision Pros. Who do I think are going to be the early adopters for this? I think it's certainly focused on people who have a substantial income. I think creatives are going to be interested in using this, especially as you get, Adobe offering new features with it and like different creative suites being able to really leverage 3D. I think it's going to be high end. I think it's going to be more business people to begin with. And then we'll see. A bunch of people have spoken about this, but like Apple has 525 retail outlets around the world in the most affluent places in the entire world. Every major city has an Apple store, basically, well, minus China. And you're going to have these headsets in all these different places. So all of these people are going to get these things on their heads. So many different people are going to get these things on their heads and be like, get really excited about what the future is going to look like. And that means that's going to certainly continue to get people excited about what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, it's cool that you said that, because I do think that it's pretty rare to have a technology today where people use it and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. They kind of like gush about it. And I think VR, soon to be AR as well with these Vision Pros, but VR is one of those technologies you can have your grandma try it, you can have your little brother try it, like you can have all these people try it and they're all like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, it's so cool, right?
Yeah, conversion on contact is what the guys at Oculus always used to say. Like, it's garbage it's like trying to describe like a smell or something like that, or like sex. It's you have to try it to really understand what it is.
Totally. All right. So what are your thoughts on the current VR landscape? And we were talking about Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. They kind of have a pretty strong stranglehold on the space now. Apple's coming in, so that's going to be changing in the future. But
Apple's coming in, and I think it's going to continue to change over the next 2 to 5 years. There are going to continue to be more entrants of people who are making headsets. Specifically, I think the larger hardware manufacturers who have been around for a long time and who have dipped their toes in beforehand, but like maybe haven't seen the return, maybe have had other priorities. But, companies like Lenovo, Sony.
So it'll be similar to, I guess, cell phones in the sense that there'll be many different models. There'll be a couple dominant players, but many different models, because right now it seems like a pretty small market in terms of, participants that have a wide market share.
Yeah, I think so. I think there'll be more that come in.
Is VR, is the main, use case for you with VR, or the mass use case, will it be more gaming centric? Because AR for me seems more like day-to-day work, and of course there'll be games, but it seems a little more like live, work, play, while VR is more like just play in my mind. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it will, as the friction goes down. I mean, right now, like, this is just so bulky and uncomfortable. This is a Quest Pro, and this is right now the state of the art. The Quest 3 will come out soon, and then that will be state of the art. But I think somewhat marginal improvements, but it's clunky. It shouldn't be this difficult. And once it gets less difficult, then, I think you've got different modes of hardware to interact with technology depending on what you're doing. When you're out and about, you've got your cell phone to be able to interact with technology, interact with software. When you're traveling for work, you've got your laptop, maybe you've got your tablet. When you're home, you've got a desktop, maybe you've got a TV. When you want to engage in an immersive experience, when you want privacy, when you want to focus, when you want to escape, then you've got a VR headset. I don't think that there is, I think that there is room to have a whole bunch of different mediums to interact with technology. And I think VR and head-mounted displays will be one of the many mediums that has its place.
Do you think that, and this, we're talking far future now, 5+ years out, hopefully less, but probably at least that, the future of compute devices will be glasses, like lightweight, simple glasses that everyone's wearing, and they have AR, VR, and all sorts of different stuff, and actually there's a new cell phone. or is that a little too sci-fi and we're going to have phones for a very, very long period of time?
Yeah, I don't know what the purpose of glasses like that are. Maybe it's to replace my cell phone. It's not going to be a fit for everything, right? If I'm in an office or in an operations center or something like that, I need to be able to, for multiple people to be able to look at a screen. It's a little bit hard with a pair of AR glasses. Well, unless there's collaborative software and everybody is looking at it, but that's a ways off. I don't see the near future use case of a pair of AR glasses that everybody wears every day. I don't see it anytime soon.
When you say anytime soon, does that mean like 20 years or like what is that time frame?
I think an add-on device to your mobile phone that provides extra information is an interesting proposition if you're able to shrink it down into a pair of glasses that are indistinguishable from regular glasses and that works seamlessly with something that's in your pocket. But I think I'm always going to want, I think I'm going to want a device also that I can pull out and type on a screen or, physically interact with. Having notifications appear in my field of vision, I think is a neat idea. Who do I want that? Who do I want to be able to reach my field of vision at any time they want? My wife, my kids, my parents. Like, is there enough that those are the only three things? Calendar notifications, maybe. I don't know. I just don't see it right now. I don't see it right now.
Totally. Okay. All right. AI. This is also a big one. AI has obviously been talk of the town past year at least, and it's going pretty crazy. What are the near term implications of AI? Meaning like next year or two, that has you pretty like surprised or shocked? Like, whoa, I did not realize that within this short period of time, this industry, this product, this whatever was going to be radically changed.
What do I think it will change over the next 2 years? I mean, I'm finding myself more and more going to ChatGPT versus Google when I need a question answered, which is very interesting. It's the first search change in habit I've had in, I don't know, 20
Ever?
years, 15, 20
Yeah.
years. So I think, just access to information, a big change. And I think, the ability to analyze things that were previously much more difficult to analyze is also something I think that is going to change. So, kind of, I guess you could say like access to professional services. So the ability to write a legal document, the ability to understand a legal document, the ability to understand my, swaths of data, whether or not it's from like my, my CRM or from my calendar or from whatever it is, like that is already changing and will continue to change and is really interesting. As an investor, I am certainly thinking about like who is going to benefit from this. That is all still working its way out. Certainly, the fees that OpenAI is charging for ChatGPT are. I do think it's quite interesting the way OpenAI took this approach of let's release ChatGPT to everybody, to let them see the power of what we're doing. I think to the average person, you got this impression that like this is going to be a service that everybody can access whenever they want. And maybe that will be the case. But then when you actually look deeper and you figure out how you can actually leverage, like how businesses are actually leveraging it or how you can leverage it for more productive use cases, like that there are fees that are incurred. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I think that there is this bit of a weird messaging there between like, hey, everybody, the world can access our stuff. Everybody take a look. Everybody try it out, blah, blah, blah. And then, this back end pricing that I think to some people comes as a shock when they really learn about it.
Are you talking about like people that are using it, very, very, very out, like businesses that are using it every day, like 1,000 times per day? I mean, those costs? Are you talking about like the average person?
Well, businesses certainly they're needing to pay, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the average person accessing it and accessing some of the features specifically, like being able to analyze data and different things like that. Like, I don't know if that
So you
stays.
think gradual paywalls will
But
potentially
yeah,
gradual
potentially.
paywalls will? Okay, interesting. What do you think about there's some people that are saying now with the AI can not today, but in the near future, AI can easily copy paste or create their own software and copy paste things very easily and create new products and whatnot. What companies will be defensible in the age of AI?
What do I think will be defensible? I think the companies that we like and that we're focused on are companies that are building their own proprietary data sets. So whether or not that be through language, through images, through sensors, whatever it is, those proprietary data sets represent defensibility because you can build models around those proprietary data sets that not anybody can just grab and copy. And we have a couple of companies in the portfolio that are doing that. Like, we love companies that are deploying cameras, or companies that are deploying some sort of sensors, or companies that are getting customers to engage with them on a very regular basis. All of that data is gold to being able to build super powerful models.
Awesome. All right, Greg. Well, unfortunately, you have a hard stop in a few minutes here, but this was absolutely stellar. I would love to keep going. Well, you'll have to come back on again in the future. If people want to find out more about yourself and Anorak, where should they go? What should they do?
Sure. Our website is anorak.vc. We have information about our portfolio companies. We have an area to apply for funding. I am also pretty active on Twitter. I'm GPCastle12. You can also find my partner on Twitter. He's also very active. He's Amal Darai. You could find both of us just by looking at the general Anorak Twitter account, though. And that's it. Through our website, we have links to our blogs and things like that. But I would say Twitter is probably the number one channel that Amal and I use to kind of publish the things that we're excited about.
Amazing. Awesome. Greg, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I definitely have to come back on again soon to have another chat.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thank you.